The village of Moké lay beneath the vast shadow of an ancient baobab tree, its twisted roots gripping the earth like the fingers of the ancestors who had walked before. The wind, thick with the scent of rain-soaked soil and burning wood, whispered secrets through the thatched rooftops of the villagers. It was said that in Moké, every stone had a memory, every river carried a story, and every word spoken could shape a man's fate. The villagers moved with purpose, their days spent tending to the fields, weaving intricate cloths and carving history into wooden masks that bore the spirits of their forefathers. But beneath the rhythm of daily life, there was an unspoken rule, a law woven so deeply into their existence that none dared to question it. Words held power, greater than the mightiest spear or the sharpest blade. An elder, his back bent from the weight of years, sat beneath the baobab, his voice raspy yet strong as he spoke to the children gathered at his feet. "You must listen, my children, for what I tell you is the truth of our people. Words are not mere sounds. They are not fleeting, like the wind. Words, when spoken with intent, can heal the sick, call forth the rain, or, if misused, summon death itself." The children leaned in, wide-eyed, their breaths shallow with fear and wonder. A cursed word, once uttered, cannot be taken back. A blessed word, once spoken, will live forever. Choose wisely, for a single word can build a kingdom, and another can tear it down. The village elders guarded these truths like sacred flames, ensuring that no man, woman, or child dared to speak in anger what could never be undone. Even the chief, Kwame, a man as firm as the mountains, knew the weight of his words. Kwame, draped in leopard skin and adorned with beads carved from ivory, stood at the heart of the village, watching as the younger generation moved with restless energy. He had ruled wisely, holding together the traditions of Moké, but the burden of leadership had grown heavier with the years. A sigh left his lips as he turned to his most trusted advisor. "Times are changing, Abina," he murmured. "I fear the young no longer listen as we once did. They hunger for power, not wisdom." Abina, a woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes as sharp as a hawk's, nodded gravely. "They forget that power without wisdom is like a river with no banks. It will flood and destroy everything in its path." Kwame's gaze settled upon the distant figure of his nephew Jabari, standing among a group of warriors, his laughter rich with confidence. "And what of him?" Kwame asked, his voice tinged with worry. "Do you think he is ready?" Abena hesitated, then answered carefully. "He is strong, yes, but there is something in his eyes, something that does not sit well with me. He does not seek to serve the village. He seeks to rule it." Far from the chief's gaze, in the cool shade of a mango tree, sat Nyah, the daughter of the Seer. Her presence alone was enough to send whispers rippling through the crowd. Some murmured in awe, others in fear, for she was not like other girls. Her birth had been foretold beneath the glow of a red moon, and the winds had carried her first cry across the plains. Nyah's beauty was undeniable, but it was her eyes, dark, pools that seemed to hold the secrets of the stars, that unnerved many. She walked like one who belonged to two worlds, the mortal and the unseen, the living and the spirits. "The spirits watch her," the villagers would say in hushed voices. "She is her mother's daughter." Mama Adisa, the Seer, was a woman of great power and mystery, a guardian of the Word of Odom, a word so sacred that none knew its true nature. Some claimed it could bring forth rain in the midst of drought, others whispered that it could turn a mighty warrior to dust with but a single utterance. But power, even in the hands of the wise, breeds envy. And Mama Adisa was not without enemies. From the shadows, Jabari watched Nyah, his expression unreadable. He had spent years earning the favor of the warriors, outshining all in combat. Yet he knew that true power in Moké was not won through brute strength alone. It was held by those whom the ancestors favored. Nyah was the key. You look troubled, Jabari. The voice of Essie, his closest confidant, cut through his thoughts. Essie, once Nyah's dearest friend, now stood at Jabari's side. But where Nyah had inherited grace and wisdom, Essie had been left with longing, a hunger that festered in the corners of her soul. The girl has everything, Essie hissed, bitterness seeping into her voice. The love of the village, the power of her mother, and now even your attention. What has she done to deserve it? Jabari smirked. Nothing, Essie, and that is why I will take it from her. Essie's lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. Tell me what you need, she whispered. Jabari turned. His gaze back to Nyah, his mind already weaving the first threads of his deception. Patience, he murmured. Patience and the right words. That night, beneath a moon that hung low and heavy, Jabari found Nyah by the river, her feet bare against the cool stones, her thoughts lost in the flowing waters. Nyah, he called gently. She turned, her dark eyes searching his face, finding nothing but warmth. You should not be here, Jabari. He stepped closer, his voice a murmur. I had to see you. I cannot ignore what my heart tells me. Nyah laughed softly, shaking her head. And what is that? He took her hands, his grip firm, steady. That you and I are meant to rule together. That Moké is waiting for us to lead it into a new era. Nyah studied him for a long moment. The wind whispered through the reeds, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a warning if only she had listened. A new era? She echoed. Moké does not need a new era, Jabari. It needs leaders who honor the past. Jabari smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. Then let us honor it together. Marry me. Nyah! For the briefest of moments, doubt flickered in her heart. But before she could answer, the river stirred, carrying with it the soft hum of voices, a whisper of the future she could not yet see. And in the darkness, hidden from sight, Essie watched, her nails digging into the bark of a tree. She had heard everything. And so the web of betrayal was spun. The night in Moké was thick with silence, but within its shadows, voices stirred like snakes slithering through the underbrush. Beneath the towering baobab tree, where the spirits of the ancestors were said to linger, Essie whispered into the ears of the elders. Mama Adisa has cursed the chief, she hissed, her voice smooth as river stone. Can you not see? His strength fades, his breath grows weaker, and still she watches from the darkness. Does she not speak the words of the unseen? Does she not hold the power of Odom? The elders, men who had spent their lives guarding tradition, shifted uneasily. The weight of her words wrapped around them like a tightening vine. It is true, another voice added, low and hesitant. The seer is powerful. Perhaps too powerful. One by one, the whispers spread, crawling through the village like smoke, curling into homes and hearts, turning respect into fear, admiration into doubt. At dawn, Jabari stood before the council, his face a mask of solemnity, though inside, his heart burned with triumph. My uncles, my elders, he began, spreading his hands. I speak not for myself, but for Moké. We have all seen the signs, the chief, my own blood, withering like a tree starved of rain. And yet, we do nothing while the one who holds words of great power walks among us, unchecked, the elders murmured, their minds already poisoned. Some nodded, some cast their gaze toward the horizon, as if searching for answers in the rising sun. She has given us many blessings, one elder said cautiously, but power that is not tamed is a danger to all. Jabari bowed his head, as though in sorrow. I do not wish to see harm come to our people, he said. I only ask for the safety of Moké. If she has done no wrong, Let her prove it before the council. The decision was made. The trial was set. The village gathered beneath the baobab, the tree that had stood through the rise and fall of many rulers. Its roots stretched deep, as though entwined with the bones of ancestors long buried. Mama Adisa stood at its base, her frame unbowed, her eyes filled with the knowing of 1,000 lifetimes. "I have served Moké since before many of you were born," she said, her voice like the wind before a storm. "I have healed your wounds. I have called rain when the skies were dry. I have spoken only truth." "Yet you call yourself innocent while our chief weakens?" Jabari challenged, stepping forward. "If you do not wield dark power, then tell us, why has he fallen ill?" Mama Adisa's gaze did not waver. "Illness comes to all men, even kings. It is the will of time, not my doing." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Fear had already taken root. Fear of the unseen. Fear of the power they could not control. Enough. One of the oldest councilmen raised his hand. "It has been decided. The seer must be cast into exile." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Exile. The sentence worse than death. To be exiled was to be forgotten, to be severed from the ancestors, to become nothing. "No!" Nyah's voice rang out as she pushed through the gathering. "You cannot do this, but—" Her words, like dry leaves in a storm, were swept away, unheard. Mama Adisa stood at the village gates where the path beyond led only to the unknown. She did not cry, nor did she plead. Instead, she turned to her daughter. "Nyah," she whispered, drawing her close. "Listen to me, child. The ancestors have not abandoned us. The wind carries our name still. You must remember this." Nyah's throat burned with unshed tears. "But where will you go?" she whispered. Mama Adisa smiled, soft and knowing. "Where the spirits lead." Then she leaned in, her lips brushing Nyah's ear, and spoke a single word. Nyah's breath caught in her chest. The air around them shifted, as if even the gods were listening. "Remember it," Mama Adisa said, "for the time will come when you must use it." Then, without another word, she turned and walked into the wilderness, her figure swallowed by the trees. With her mother gone, Nyah became a shadow in her own home. Those who once sought her wisdom now turned away, their eyes averted as if fearing she too held a curse in her tongue. "She is her mother's child," they whispered. "Who knows what she can do?" Jabari came to her with words coated in honey, his face carved into an expression of grief. "Nyah," he murmured, "I grieve with you. But you need not walk this path alone. Let me stand beside you. Let me restore what has been lost." Nyah lifted her gaze to his. "A serpent speaks with a forked tongue. You would take my mother's place, and now you wish to take my hand?" she asked softly. Jabari reached for her, his fingers brushing against hers. "Together, we will rule. This village is lost without guidance." A flicker of doubt passed through Nyah's heart. She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe someone. But the spirits do not let lies live long. That night, drawn by a sense of unease, Nyah followed the sounds of laughter that floated from the outskirts of the village. There, she saw them, Jabari and Essie, their heads bent together, their voices thick with triumph. "She believed me," Jabari chuckled, the smile on his lips cruel and cold. "The seer is gone, and soon Nyah will be mine. Then the village will be mine." Essie laughed. She was always foolish, always too trusting. Nyah stood frozen, the weight of their betrayal pressing against her chest like a boulder. She had lost everything, but as she turned away, stepping back into the night, a new thought burned into her mind. Not everything. She still had the word, and soon they would learn its power. The next morning, Jabari stood before the village, waiting for Nyah's answer. But she was gone. "The forest," they whispered. "She has entered the land of the spirits." Jabari frowned, unease prickling at his skin. The forest was not a place for the living, but the ancestors knew. They knew her heart burned for justice, and soon so would all of Moké. The drums of Moké roared through the village like a beast awakened from slumber. Their thunderous rhythm echoed against the earth, calling all to gather. Smoke curled from burning torches, their flickering light dancing against the faces of the people who had come to witness the rise of their new ruler. The air was thick with the scent of roasted yams and spiced meats, yet the sweetness of the feast could not mask the bitterness that clung to the village like mist. Though the people wore garments of vibrant reds, blues, and golds, their hearts were painted in uncertainty. Jabari stood tall upon the sacred dais, his robes embroidered with the symbols of kingship, the weight of Moké's history woven into every golden thread. He gripped the staff of rule, his fingers pressing into the ancient carvings, as if seeking to absorb the power of the chieftains before him. His face, carved in a mask of pride, bore no trace of hesitation. "Look at them," he thought, his gaze sweeping across the villagers below. "Fools! They have always feared power, yet they kneel before it." A hush fell over the crowd as the high priest stepped forward, a ceremonial bowl of palm wine in his wrinkled hands. "Jabari, son of Moké, do you come before the spirits of our ancestors with a clean heart?" Jabari bowed his head. A lie could not be heard if it was spoken with enough conviction. "I do." The priest nodded solemnly, lifting the staff to place it in Jabari's waiting hands. Then, a movement at the edge of the crowd. Gasps rippled through the villagers, followed by a murmur that grew into a wave of fearful whispers. "It cannot be. She was lost to the forest. The spirits have sent her back." Jabari's fingers froze over the staff. His breath caught in his throat as his eyes locked onto the figure stepping from the shadows. Nyah, the girl who had been cast out, the woman who had returned, the one who had spoken the word that reshaped destiny. And so, the tale of Moké was written in the stars, forever. The village of Moké lay still beneath the morning sky. The drums of celebration had long since faded, replaced by the whispers of the wind that carried the weight of judgment. Where once voices had cheered the rise of a ruler, now only hushed murmurs remained. Smoke from the dying torches curled into the air like the last breath of a fading era. The once proud square, where Jabari had stood draped in golden robes, was now littered with abandoned garlands, trampled beneath the feet of those who had turned away from their false king. "We were blind," an old woman murmured, clutching her shawl tightly. "We allowed ourselves to be led by ambition, not wisdom." "And now?" a man whispered back. "What becomes of us? We cast aside the blood of the Seer. Have we cursed ourselves?" Fear laced their voices, for they had seen with their own eyes what the power of the ancestors could do. The words spoken by Nyah had torn the veil between the seen and the unseen, and now the village stood in the aftermath of a truth they could no longer ignore. The elders, their faces lined with the weight of regret, moved through the crowd, their once firm steps hesitant. They had sat in judgment before, condemning the innocent, but now they kneeled. Nyah stood before them, unshaken, unbent, the daughter of the seer who had been cast out. She looked at them not with rage, not with vengeance, but with the quiet certainty of one who had seen the heart of the world and returned. "Forgive us," one of the elders whispered, bowing his head so low that his forehead touched the earth. "We turned against the true bloodline. We were foolish." "Take the staff, Nyah," another said, his voice cracking. "Only you are worthy to lead Moké." The chieftain's staff, once meant for Jabari, now lay before her. A symbol of power. a symbol of all that had been lost. For a moment, the village held its breath, waiting for her answer. Then, Nyah did what none expected. She did not take the staff. "Power," she said, her voice steady as the river, "was never meant to rest in the hands of one alone. It should be shared, held by those who cherish the land, not those who hunger for control." The elders looked up, their brows furrowed in confusion. "Moké does not need a ruler," Nyah continued. "It needs wisdom, it needs balance. Let the people lead themselves. For the strength of a village lies not in a single voice, but in many." A silence followed her words, but it was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of understanding. The staff remained on the ground. No one picked it up. The journey beyond Moké was long, but Nyah did not falter. She walked through fields where the grass whispered secrets, crossed rivers that reflected the past, and passed through sacred lands where the spirits hummed in the rustling leaves. She did not need to ask for directions. The wind guided her, the same wind that had carried her mother's name to the forgotten places of the earth. She found Mama Adisa beneath a tree whose roots ran deep, a woman forgotten by men, but never by the ancestors. Her once strong frame was now frail, her fingers lined with years of exile, but her eyes burned as brightly as they always had. "You have returned," Mama Adisa said, her voice soft, knowing. Nyah fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around her mother. And for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, she wept. "They were wrong," Nyah whispered, her tears warm against Mama Adisa's shoulder. "You were never a traitor. You were always the light they refused to see." Mama Adisa's fingers, weak but steady, brushed against Nyah's cheek. "The truth is like the sun, my child," she murmured. "It may be hidden by the clouds, but it never stops shining." The moment they stepped back onto the soil of Moké, the wind shifted. The ancestors had been waiting. The villagers, once so eager to forget, now bowed their heads in shame and reverence. "We see now," one of them whispered. "We were wrong," another murmured. No one dared to speak her mother's name in shame any longer. "Mama Adisa," they chanted, "the Seer of Moké, the one who was wronged." She had returned, not as an exile, but as the guardian she had always been. Nyah stood before the people one last time, her gaze firm, her voice like the wind before a storm. "Words hold power," she declared. "A man who speaks in truth shapes the future. A man who speaks in treachery digs his own grave." The villagers nodded, absorbing her lesson, for they had seen the proof with their own eyes. "A man who betrays the trust of the gods," she continued, "will find that even his own shadow abandons him." The wind carried her words through the village, weaving them into the very fabric of Moké's history. And then, before dawn broke, Nyah walked away. Some say the spirits took her, lifting her into the sky to sit among the stars. Others say she became the wind itself, roaming the earth, watching, whispering to those who would listen. But one thing remained certain: her name would never be forgotten. Nyah, the girl who had been cast out, the woman who had returned, the one who had restored balance with a single word. Betrayal carries consequences beyond mortal understanding. True power lies not in ruling but in restoring balance and justice. Words hold the power to destroy or heal. Choose them wisely.